Hey, welcome back to the El Camino project. We're going to start working on this floor pan, and if you watched the previous project where we tacked in this shifter tunnel here, you remember we left a couple of big old gaping holes in there. So the first thing we're going to do is get those things closed up, and I just cut me a little old piece of poster board. I'm going to use that as a template here to measure out this piece that we need. I'll probably end up cutting this in two pieces to fill in this little dog leg down here at the bottom. We'll see how good my cutting skills are. I'd like to do it all in one piece, but if I can't, we'll do it in two. Alright, there's our template. I've cut it just a little bit bigger than the mark that I made on there, so I can get a nice clean fit in there. Once I cut it, the piece of sheet metal that we're going to weld in there, I'll use a little buffer and just smooth it down till we get a nice good fit. I don't want to leave any real big gaps that I have to fill in. Alright, next thing we're going to do is lay this out on here and try to get it nice and close to the edge there to cut down on my cutting a little bit. And just mark this off. Alright, we'll use a little cutter here and just start cutting. Well, after much cutting and grinding and shaping and a little bit of hammering and bending, I've got the piece made to go in here. So what I'll do is I'll start tacking it from one end and just kind of form it in as I go to make sure that everything's lined up good. Always be sure you wear some kind of gloves when you work with this sheet metal too. This stuff is wicked. Now, the only thing I got to do, I want to make sure that I've got a good surface to weld on. And the other thing I noticed is that underneath this thing, it's covered in grease. So the plan was to sandblast and power wash this thing before we started all this, but we decided to go ahead and at least get some of this stuff welded in before we did that. So I'm going to get underneath there with the brush and clean some of that off so when I'm welding it's not going to fill up the shop with smoke. Oops. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and tack this piece in. Alright, there's the top tacked in. I'm going to go ahead and take those clamps off of there. I'll go ahead and tack down here. This is all lined up real nice and clean. Looking good. Work that bottom just a little bit, kind of like a hammer. There she is, all tacked in. Alright, we got that piece in. As you can see, I went back and tack welded it quite a bit more. So I'll just go back and probably just do some stitch welding on it to finish it off. That metal's pretty thin and it's nice to go easy and slow on it. And as soon as that one's done, then we'll go ahead and fabricate a piece to fix the front hole that's in there. As you can see, that thing's pretty big. So here we go. Hey, I want to say thank you, Jeff, for the MIG welder. HTP America is our official provider for our welding equipment. They've got a great line of products. Y'all should really take a look at their website, www.usaweld.com. They've got MIG welders, TIG, plasma, and all kinds of other tools, body working tools, sheet metal tools, stuff that I don't even know people made. They got a great line of products, so check them out as soon as you can. And thanks, Jeff. Well, it's almost midnight, and I got my two faithful little helpers out here going to help me. There's Copper, and this is Layla. So, you know, by the end of the day, everybody's asleep. Now's the time you can get some work done. Okay, here's the line that I drew across here to square this up a little bit, so when I cut this piece, I'm not going to have to do a whole lot of shaping on it to make it fit. This piece of metal right here is a lot thinner than the piece that I'm patching in, so this will be a lot easier to cut. So I'm going to go ahead and take some metal off of here to square it up. I'm going to make a template to cut this piece out. This is usually easier with two people, but since it's the middle of the night, all my help has kind of gone to sleep, so I'll just make the best of it here. The nice part about it is if you cut it too big, you can just grind some off. But after you get done grinding for hours upon hours, you find out that grinding is about the worst part of doing body work. Welding's fun, cutting is fun, but grinding is not fun. I'm going to end up cutting a little triangular piece to go right in here, so I'm pretty much just going to cut me a rectangle out and get it in there, and then I'll cut a little piece to fill in right down here. So there we go. Now we get to play with a sharp object called a scissor. Okay, we got this piece tacked in, and most of it's welded along the top and the two sides there. We got to do a little bit more grinding, and there's a little bit of a hole up there at the top we're going to patch in. So we're going to give this new HTP MiG 200 welder a good show here. We're going to do some tacking up there and fill that one little hole up there at the top. I don't know if you can see it in this video or not, but our little patch piece didn't quite fill in all the little gaps there, so we're going to fill that in and then finish grinding this thing down and get on to the next step. So we got that top part done. I'm gonna tack that one little hole in up there, grind it down, and then we'll be ready to flip the car over on the other side and get the bottom part done. What I've done here is I've got the heat turned way down on this thing because this metal is really thin and rusty. This MIG welder from HTP has got 24 heat settings, so I've got it set on almost the lowest setting you can get. I got the wire feed rate turned way down, so I can go at this thing kind of slow and fill it in. I've already got a piece welded all the way across the middle of it. So right now I'm just kind of letting it cool off a little bit. One thing you sure don't want to do is get that metal too hot, especially when it's in this kind of shape. And this piece is even thinner or thicker metal than this, and this is a little bit thicker than this. So whenever you're welding like that on different size metals, you always want to make sure that you're doing keep most of your arc on the thickest piece. And then what I'm doing is just, when I do that, just kind of push that puddle over onto the thinner part there to keep the heat off of it. Almost there. Just have to grind that down and might have to touch it up just a little bit more and be ready to go. I got most of it ground down, and I've still got one little hole there that I got to fill in. Good idea to always wear a glove when you're doing this. I always forget. Alright, we got that part of the floor panel patched in there. What we're going to do now is we're going to rotate this thing over so we can get to that other side a lot easier. I'll show you how easy this is. This rotisserie is great. I don't have it completely balanced, but it sure makes it easy. Just roll it up where you want it, snug it down, and you're good to go. We got one more clump of weld metal right here that we need to get ground down. We got most of the rest of it smoothed out. I know you're probably looking at it saying that's not smooth, but for going under the carpet that nobody's ever going to see, we're not going to spend a whole lot more time on it. It's good and strong. That's the main thing that we're after. And of course the hole's all sealed up. So what we're doing up here, we had a hole that we burned in here before we got this welder, MIG welder from HTP America. We were using another welder and we had burned a hole through here. So we've gone back and filled it in. This welder is great from HTP. We filled this hole in and now we just have to grind it down. For a lot of this grinding, I've been using a 4.5-inch Craftsman grinder. But for some of these thicker ones, what I've been using is a little cutoff wheel. This is it right here, little one from Husky, and does a great job of cutting through that metal. The blade is a lot more, the cutting abrasive is much thinner, and it cuts through there a lot easier. Gets the job done a lot quicker. So that's what we're going to hit next, and once we're done with that, then this project right here is finished and we can get on to the next one. Alright, we got that ground down smooth. In doing so, a couple more little pinholes showed up in there. So I'm just going to tack those holes in, do a little bit more grinding, and we're going to call this little step of the project finished. I just turned the MIG welder on. It's been off for a few hours, so every time I do that, I always like to, number one, make sure I got the gas valve opened on the tank. I've done that before. I forgot to open it. But I also like to just shoot a little bit of wire out of there and get a little gas flowing, just to make sure we're good to go. Flip it off a little bit. Alright, we'll give that a grind and see how that looks. Alright, I'm going to hit it with this wheel right here and just kind of knock the little rough edges off. And this is just kind of helping to knock some of the buckshot off of here too. Well, there it is. There's the semi-finished product. Still more to go, but for now we got that part done. If you watch the first step of this, while the body was still on the frame, we tacked that boot mount piece into that big hole that was there. And then this second part of it is once the body was up on the rotisserie, as you can see, we're loaded up on here, and it makes it really easy to work on this thing. We've got it set up on a Accessible Systems rotisserie, and it makes it really nice for turning it, getting it any way that you want, so you can get in there and do the work you need to do. So since we're on the Gulf Coast, bare metal turns to rust just about overnight, so I went ahead and shot a coat of primer on there just to keep any rust off of it. Next step that we're doing after this is we got a couple little holes here in the floor pan that we're going to just tack some little patches into, and then we're going to be using a kit from Pour 15 provided by Don Hart Radiator Service, and we're going to repair these floor pans. Most of the time people like to replace these things, but these are fairly strong and pretty good shape, so we're going to use this kit on there and see how good it does. So just check back with us, and that'll be the next thing we'll be doing.